Welcome back to Small College Conversations. I'm Kristen Eargle. I'm joined by Tiffani Selhorst, Defiance College's athletic director. Tiffani, thanks for being a part of us.
Thanks for having me, Kristen.
You took over the program about a year ago. Walk in the door with 25 years of coaching experience. How has that informed your role now as an athletics director?
Well, I think for me, I was very fortunate that my previous institution, I worked for an AD at Indiana University East, named Joe Griffin, who had also had years and years of experience, both in coaching and as an athletic director. So, he knew that my ultimate plan was to become an AD someday. And every year in my 10 years there, he gave me a little bit more of an administrative role. So I kind of started to understand what the administrative side looked like. He came from private institutions and small colleges. So, I bet weekly we would meet and talk about some of the things that he wished he could put in at a state school, which is a little bit harder. We all know it looks a little bit different. But what that did was kind of help me to organize a plan for when I got hired at Defiance College, which is a small private institution. So I used to joke with Joe all the time that I'm putting our plans that we came up with over the years into motion right now, where he sometimes hits more roadblocks than I do.
Having sat on the coaching side of the desk for years, and obviously you interviewed for jobs, you have a unique perspective now, having that role of being responsible for hiring coaches. So how has it helped you identify successful candidates? I mean, you would have to have the cheat sheet for finding, for knowing how this works, right?
Yeah, well, you know what? One of the things that really attracted me to Defiance College is, one, I grew up in a small town that's not far from Defiance. So I kind of knew, the culture around here, and knew that this area is kind of a hardworking area, and they understand what it takes to get to the next level. So when I was hiring coaches, one of the things that became really important to me was, in their personalities and in their answers, and just by talking to some of the people that were their references, like, are they hard workers? And I know that sounds so easy, but are they hard workers? Do they understand that this job at Defiance College is hard work, just as it is just in college coaching? You said when we were speaking before the interview that you get it because
Right.
Your husband is a head coach. So it's hard work. And just understanding that the recruiting process is the lifeblood of any program. So are they recruiters? Do they know how hard recruiting is? And do they understand how hard small private college recruiting is? Because, what I've seen in the last 11 years being at a small university is that you get a lot more no's from recruits than you do yeses. So were these candidates able to pivot on a dime? And if their plan did not go the way that they expected it to in the recruiting process, are they able to kind of come up with another plan and find a new way to get what they need recruiting wise?
That is such a good point, because that's very specific to something you would have to identify early on in a candidate to be able to pivot like that. You took over the department during the transition of Division III to NAIA. What has been some of the biggest challenges walking through that, from staffing, coaches, student athletes, and overall?
Well, I'll say that we're not new to any of the challenges that anybody's going through right now. So, the biggest challenge is probably the long-term fiscal stress that higher education institutions are dealing with right now. And we hear horror stories every week. It seems like a lot of colleges and universities are reporting a deficit in their finances. And I think that is kind of a stress, but the thing about Defiance College is we're not in that position, which is really good. Some of our goals that we met this year, and, I'm sure that we'll get to that at some point in the interview, was that we're able to promote and show that Defiance it has room to grow right now. The biggest stress is the finances, but everybody's going through that. So I'm not inventing the wheel here when it comes to that question.
Transitioning into the WHAC, the travel for in-conference competition will decrease significantly. Have you thought about, schedule changes to better the student athlete experiences, or are there going to be areas where you talked about the financial piece of it? The funds will be allocated differently because the travel will be lessened. Obviously, that's got to play a part a little bit.
Yeah, sure. That was a big part of the decision to move to the NAIA and be a part of the Wolverine Hoosier Athletic Conference, was because, obviously these are shorter trips. We have no overnight trips. Everything's a day trip, and the motivation behind that also went into the academic side of it, because now we have less missed class time. We're also encouraging these students to become more involved on campus and not just be athletes and students, like be more involved. It's really important to Defiance College that we have a holistic approach, that you get every part of being an adult as you move in here. So that was a big thing for us. And moving to the Wolverine Hoosier Athletic Conference and the Mid-States for football was a big reason for that, was because of the travel and the savings that we got. We were able to reallocate some of those funds that we were saving and putting them into things that, student athletes want right now, which is more gear, better uniforms. We want more equipment for some of our programs. But the biggest thing that we were able to do, and I'm sure that a lot of athletic directors are going to be able to relate to this, is that we were able to hire an additional athletic trainer. That's a huge
big
one.
pain point right now, is the not being able to add staffing there.
Yes. Yep. It's hard to find some people, and costs have gone up, and, salaries have gone up. So we were able to kind of adjust and pivot with that. And I think that's probably the one thing that a lot of ADs will be able to relate to.
Without question. Now, going through that process, was that something a part of your strategic plan in some of this, or did this kind of come about like, hey, this is a great way we could use this new revenue piece?
A little bit of both, I think. Yeah. We knew that the athletic training piece was going to be what people are calling it as a crisis right now. I don't know if it's worthy of that, maybe. And we're very fortunate to have a strong athletic training program here. But when we were kind of looking at it over a year ago, that was something that we kept in our mind, that we were going to have to solve this problem because we had graduate assistants that were helping our athletic trainers, and we no longer have that. So I guess we kind of knew that piece was coming. I think it was an added benefit for the coaches and for the student athletes coming in that we're able to, spend a little bit more money on gear and equipment, though. That was a pivot.
And that was the question I was going to ask you, a follow-up to that, which is kind of how you managed kind of the fix before you're able to hire staffing. Was that through your existing GA program?
With the athletic training piece? Yeah. So we knew it was going to be a problem here because we were going to have a hard time getting graduate assistants. Everybody is having a hard time getting those grad assistants right now. So we just, last summer, it was something that came to the table where administration needed to talk about it, and the savings that we were able to save on travel, we had decided that that was going to be invested in athletic training.
You mentioned it, that everyone now, this is a different interview, is rowing in the same direction at Defiance, and merging the old and the new culture. What actionable steps or initiatives have you specifically taken to kind of bring that together? I know it's going to be hard because you have to brag on yourself, but tell us kind of some of the things that have done this working. Help us out here.
Well, I don't need to brag on myself because it's a whole group of people that came together, and the thought of moving to the NAIA was in motion before they hired me. So I just kind of came aboard and was able to do more research on it to show the positives of Defiance College moving back to the NAIA. So one thing that I would say that has been the biggest piece for us is at the cabinet level and then at the board of trustees level, it feels like everybody's on the same page. Last summer, the new VP of enrollment and myself, we were both new at the time. So when we were able to get on the same page about how to recruit and moving forward with the plan and the strategic plan, it was almost natural to see the rest of the departments kind of be able to execute their plan. It was interesting to see that it all started with enrollment and athletics. So when we got on the same page, and I joke with my VP of enrollment all the time, I talk to him more than I talk to anybody else in my life. We talk multiple times a day, making sure that we're on the same page with recruits and packages, and he's out recruiting, so he's sending me names, I'm sending them to coaches, and there's follow-up. So that I think that was the biggest problem that was solved last summer. And then some of the other actionable steps that we kind of took was, when I came in, I set realistic goals for my coaches that seemed attainable for incoming freshmen, and then also the overall roster goal. We don't want to carry teams that have 30 more kids than what they need to play, but if we just got those roster goals healthy, we were in a great position on the enrollment side. So that was kind of step one, was to set those goals and make them realistic. The other actionable point that maybe some ADs and some programs will be able to relate to is we hired somebody in our admissions department that solely deals with athletics. So any kind of visits that we set up, or any inquiries that come in, or any questions, we have one person that we go to. That allows the other admissions counselors to go out and focus on non-athletes. So we've seen some real headway with that right now. And then the last thing, this was kind of a no-brainer for us, but one of the things that made Defiance College so strong in the past was that they got a lot of local kids and students. So we kind of shifted, and we're adding another step this fall and focusing on our local area. So there's about 8 counties that we're really focusing in on, and at least giving our story of who Defiance College is to give those student athletes something to think about. Like, okay, maybe I don't want to leave the area. Maybe I do want to stay closer to home. Maybe it is important to me that, mom, grandma, aunts, uncles, cousins can all come out and watch me continue in my athletic career.
Yeah. I mean, recruiting locally can have such an impact. Like you just said, it's a residual generation of revenue because they have the proximity to come to campus, to spend more money, to be more bought in. I mean, that's a great strategy there, long-term as well. Key successes from your past year, what would you say?
Man, I'll be honest, it's hard to kind of just get into a few of these, but I will just touch on some points. We were able to exceed our recruiting athletic goal that we set last summer by over 30 athletes, which is a big jump for Defiance College. Overall, the campus was able to hit a fundraising goal for a capital campaign that we did. We exceeded that. It was actually the second highest fundraising year in the history of Defiance College, so that was a big deal. We were able to do something that a lot of smaller institutions were not able to do last year, and that was to balance our budget. We actually came in with a surplus, so that's a big deal for us. And then a big piece for us and our culture when I came in was to make sure that the returning students still felt like they were an important part of Defiance College and what we were doing, even though we were transitioning from NCAA Division III to NAIA. So our retention numbers for returning students has been very strong and has surpassed what our expectations were so far. So that's a big piece too.
Amazing. Especially when I come back to the generation thing after this question, which is, obviously you talked about those pain points that I think you've already highlighted it a little bit, but, needing athletics to be an enrollment driver. What are ways you're tackling some of this? Anything that you haven't mentioned so far?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now that I think a lot of schools that are at our level are kind of dealing with is the impact from the NCAA Division I and the Power 5, 4 conferences, whatever they're at now or whatever they're about to be. And just knowing and understanding that the ripple effects from those decisions that the NCAA is facing with those are things that we're going to feel at our level. We may not exactly know what that looks like yet, but we know it's coming. And one of the things that is important to us and why we transitioned to the NAIA was that now we're kind of part of an association that focuses in on the small colleges and is trying to better it for all of us that are in the same boat, right? And sometimes it felt like when we were in CAA last year, some of the struggles were the fact that we were having to deal with the decisions that were made for the top 5% there, and it kind of fallen down on us. So again, we don't know what it's going to look like with some of the stuff that the NCAA is dealing with NIL and the Power 5 conferences emerging, and just the scholarship models that they've now come up with. We'll see what that looks like for us coming down, but. The other ways that we're kind of tackling this is, like I said before, focusing in on the local students here, not saying that that's our only place to go, but we just want to build our story in our area and focus in on about 8 counties. There's a few more that we want to kind of talk to, but that's the biggest thing right now is just trying to get a hold of Defiance College story and share it with anybody who's willing to listen.
I have to ask, you talked about hitting revenue goals, exceeding them actually. Yep. Where did you find traction? Where did your story resonate most?
I think for the capital campaign, just the belief that the donors were a part of something bigger than us, and it's bigger than just this year. Defiance College has been around for 175 years, and just getting those donors and those people to know and buy into the plan that we plan on being around for another 175 years. So I think that was the biggest thing. Again, it comes back to telling the story of Defiance College and who we are. And once we're able to get the true story out there of who we are, people want to get on board.
You've had a very busy first year. I mean, what a time to join an athletics department when they're going through so much change. You couldn't pick everyone that was already just cruising. There's a lot of changes that you had to help implement, which obviously is something that excites you that you've been for a while. But what excites you the most about this upcoming fall and as you look into year 2?
Well, I mean, this is our first year, after a recruiting year of NAIA. So it's exciting to kind of see what the coaches did with what they were able to have and do, with the athletic scholarships. What does that look like now for each program, as well as building their own cultures? Like I said, the biggest piece is just understanding that the returning students are still a major part of what we're doing here. So just building that culture that kind of allows both to come together and give these coaches a chance to speak to their own programs. We don't expect, to win everything our first year, but I think we definitely have a foothold on building a winning culture, and that is important to us. That's what I'm most excited about, to see the change in culture.
Thank you so much for this insight and your time today, Tiffani.
Yeah, thanks for having me.